Welcome, one and all. Welcome back to Why Make Music. This is episode 40, and as always, I'm ThinkTimm here with the one and only Willa May, better known as DJ Warm Cookies. How are you doing, Willa May?
I'm feeling great, Tim. I've got my cup of tea, my comfy headphones, and I am so ready for today's chill conversation. We have a pretty fascinating theme lined up, don't we?
Oh yeah. Today we're diving into something special for all the Prince fans and studio nerds out there. We're talking about Prince's mysterious alter ego, Camille, who Camille was, what that persona meant to Prince, and how fans reacted to it. We'll get into the cultural and historical context of that whole era, and if that's not cool enough, we're also going to geek out on how Prince created the Camille voice effect using old school analog studio techniques, basically messing with tape speed.
And of course, since this is Why Make Music, we have to bring it back to the studio. So we're going to explore how to recreate that famous Camille voice effect using only Logic Pro stock plugins. We even have a technical breakdown that we'll walk through step by step, but don't worry, we'll keep it casual and fun. It'll be like two friends experimenting in the studio, which it literally is.
Absolutely. Plus, as if that wasn't enough, we're going to segue into a conversation about the bass lines in Prince's Partyman and Alphabet's two super funky tracks. We'll break down what makes those bass tones tick, talk about any channel strip presets or tricks, and chat about how you can emulate those iconic bass sounds in Logic Pro with just stock plugins.
I'm excited for that, because those bass lines are insane, and doing it with only stock plugins means anyone with Logic can try this at home. No fancy third-party stuff needed. DIY music producers, Logic users, and Prince aficionados, this episode is especially for you.
By the end of this episode, you'll have some new stories about Prince to tell your friends, and you might even have some new production tricks to play with in your next track. So grab a seat, get cozy, and let's jump in.
Who was Camille? Prince's alter ego and fan reactions. Alright, Tim, let's start with the basics. For listeners who might not know, who or what was Camille in the context of Prince's music?
Great question. Camille was essentially a character or alter ego that Prince created in the mid-1980s. The idea was that Prince would record songs with his voice pitch shifted up to sound higher, almost androgynous, like a gender-bending vocal persona. In fact, Prince envisioned Camille as a separate identity, a feminine, mysterious figure who wasn't explicitly male or female. He even planned at one point to release an entire album as Camille without any mention of Prince's name on it. Can you imagine that? In 1987, fans might have bought a record by Camille, not knowing it was actually Prince singing.
That's wild. It's like he was inventing a pop persona from scratch. And given Prince's whole vibe, I'm not surprised he toyed with gender and identity. This was around the Sign of the Times era, right?
Exactly. It was after he dissolved the revolution around 1986 to 1987. Prince was in this incredibly creative and transitional phase. The Camille persona gave him a fresh outlet, almost like he could channel a different side of his artistry through that high-pitched voice. Culturally, it was significant because Prince was already known for blurring gender norms in his fashion and performances, and now he was doing it with his voice. His engineer, Susan Rogers, actually noted that when they conceived Camille, who might have been male, might have been female, it wasn't really clear. So the whole Camille concept was intentionally androgynous and a bit of a mind bender.
And how did did the fan base receive this? I mean, did people know about Camille at the time, or was it sort of an inside secret until later?
At first, most fans only encountered Camille through the music without necessarily knowing why Prince sounded different. For example, songs like Housequake and If I Was Your Girlfriend, both on Sign of the Times, feature that sped up high-pitched vocal. That's Prince as Camille. The original Camille album itself was actually shelved just weeks before its planned release, even though some vinyl copies had already been pressed. So the album never officially came out in 1987, and instead, a lot of those tracks got scattered onto other releases. Fans in the know, especially the diehards, eventually learned about the mythic Camille album, and it became this legendary, lost album in Prince lore.
Right, it's like part of Prince mythology now. I've heard stories of those rare Camille vinyl test pressings going for insane prices among collectors because it's such a coveted piece of history.
Definitely, and over time, as more information came out, the fan base grew to love the whole Camille concept. Many appreciated how bold and creative it was. Prince exploring dual personalities and the whole battle of vice and virtue through this character. There were even little bits of lore, like poetry in the tour books about Camille, that hinted at a backstory for the persona. It added to the mystique. Some listeners were just intrigued by the funky sound of the voice, while others dug into the philosophical or gender-bending aspect of it.
I remember hearing the song Shockadelica and being like, wait, is that Prince? Why does he sound like that? It was kind of spooky and cool at the same time. Definitely an attention grabber.
Exactly. It made you pay attention. Now, interestingly, in recent years, there was talk of finally releasing the original Camille album. In 2022, Third Man Records, Jack White's label, actually got the rights to release it, supposedly with the Prince estate's blessing. As of the last update I heard, there's no release date yet, and it's kind of in limbo, but just the fact that it might officially see the light of day has fans pretty excited. It's like nearly 40 years later, Camille might officially step out of the shadows.
That's amazing. Fingers crossed we eventually get to hear it as Prince intended. Camille is such a fascinating chapter of Prince's career. Part artistic alter ego, part studio experiment. And speaking of studio experiments, alright, gather round. I got a juicy Prince tale for you. Picture this. It's 1987 and Prince just dropped Sign of the Times. Now, on the single's cover, there's this mysterious figure in a peach-colored mini dress and high heels, face hidden behind a big heart, cradling Prince's iconic cloud guitar. The first time I saw it, I'm squinting like, hold up, is that Prince in drag on his own record? I wasn't alone. Everybody was gossiping that Prince had pulled a fast one and put himself in a dress on the cover. Prince was always blurring lines, but this was next-level androgynous chic. Was it a clue? A prank? An artistic statement? We didn't know, but we loved talking about it. Turns out, Prince loved keeping us guessing. Rumor had it he'd been toying with an alter ego named Camille, a sort of androgynous feminine persona, and some folks even whispered that he might tour as Camille in full drag. Imagine that. So when that single came out, fans like me thought, aha, he's really doing it. For a minute, my brother and I were convinced that peach-clad figure was Prince, ready to shock the world. Prince's PR team, sly as ever, kept mum, let the rumor mill churn. Free publicity, baby, and controversy. Oh, it was brewing. The cover provoked controversy because people truly believed Prince was on their cross. It was the talk of the town. Was Prince making a statement about gender? Was this the next phase of his artistry? Or was he just messing with us for kicks? Spoiler alert, it wasn't Prince at all. The mystery model was actually his new dancer, Cat Glover, playing decoy in Prince's clothes. Cat Glover had the legs and attitude to pull it off, a fact some sharp-eyed fans noted. Prince's scrawny butt ain't got those thighs, one quipped. On the back cover of the single, the veil lifted, Cat Glover is shown posing openly with Prince's guitar, giving away the game. In hindsight, it feels like a fun inside joke Prince played on us. I mean, legend has it, Prince originally considered performing as Camille, going full androgynous, but maybe decided the world, or Warner Brothers, wasn't quite ready, so he gave us a tease instead. Artistic intent? Probably Prince poking at our perceptions of gender and identity, seeing if he could Princify the conversation. PR strategy? Absolutely genius. The ambiguity got everyone talking about the song before you even heard a note. So there I was in '87, staring at this peach and black image, debating with my friends. Is it him or not? Prince never confirmed it outright, of course. He let the mystery be, and that's Prince for you, always 2 steps ahead. By the time we figured it out, or rather, finally read the credits and realized it was Cat Glover, Prince had already moved on to the next surprise. But man, what a story to tell. I look back and cackle, thinking how Prince had us all duped for a hot minute. In the end, the androgynous cover stunt was a perfect slice of Prince lore. Bold, playful, a little provocative, and iconically ahead of its time. This has been DJ Warm Cookies with the tale of the mysterious peach cover. Got you shaking your head and saying, that Prince, what a trickster. Shall we get into how Prince actually created that Camille voice? Creating the Camille voice, Prince's analog studio trick. Okay, so how did Prince do it? How did he physically create the Camille voice back in the 80s? Obviously, there were no convenient plugins back then to just click, make my voice high-pitched.
This is where it gets delightfully nerdy. Prince used analog tape recording techniques to alter his voice. The basic trick was varied speed. He would slow down the tape while recording his vocals, singing the part at a lower pitch and slower tempo than the final song. Then, when the tape was played back at normal speed, voila, his vocals would play faster and at a higher pitch than he originally sang, giving that quirky Camille voice.
So essentially, he recorded himself sounding kind of like a low Camille, and then by speeding it up, it turned into high Camille on playback.
Exactly. If you were in the studio, you might have heard Prince singing in a slower, lower voice along with a slowed down backing track. Then when you return the tape to normal speed, his voice pops out in that sped up androgynous register. It's the same principle as the Chipmunks trick. Record slow, play fast for squeaky voices, but Prince did it more artfully. Not too fast, just enough to sound ambiguously gendered and funky without being cartoonish.
Wow, that requires a lot of precision, I imagine. If you go too far, you get Alvin and the Chipmunks, like you said, which is fun, but definitely not what Prince was going for on those sexy funk tracks.
Right, he used a subtle touch. We're talking about maybe a change of a few semitones up, not an octave or anything crazy, just enough to give his voice a different persona. And Prince had experience with this technique. He'd actually experimented with vari-speed vocals on earlier songs. For instance, the 1984 B-side Erotic City has parts where his voice is sped up. He was no stranger to playing with vocal pitch and timbre.
Was it all done with tape machines, or did he ever use any early pitch shifting gear?
Good point. He did both. Mostly it was the tape vari-speed method, which is analog, but Prince also had this piece of outboard gear called the Publison Infernal Machine. Sounds ominous, huh? Which was basically a fancy, early digital pitch shifter effects unit. According to folks who worked with him, he sometimes used the Publison to help create the Camille vocals as well. So one way or another, either by mechanical tape trick or by external gadget, he'd alter the pitch of his voice during production.
The combination probably gave him some flexibility, but at the end of the day, the effect we hear, that Camille voice, it's still his voice, just tweaked. It's not like a vocoder or talkbox where the timbre changes completely. You can tell it's Prince, but also not Prince. It's such a trip to listen to even now.
I totally agree. It's Prince, but in disguise. And I think that was the intention, to sort of detach the vocals from the person we recognize. It allowed him to sing from a different perspective. Some of the lyrics he tackled as Camille, like in If I Was Your Girlfriend, explore gender and relationship dynamics in a way that might feel different coming from Prince versus coming from this quasi-female persona. It's really fascinating art-wise.
And how about the reception once people did realize it was him? Did fans think he was crazy, or genius, or both?
A bit of both, probably. Prince fans are used to him shape-shifting. So many thought it was genius and just classic Prince being Prince. It definitely added depth to how people interpret those songs. Some casual listeners in the 80s might not have known or cared why the vocals sounded strange on a song like Housequake. They just enjoyed the funk, but the hardcore fans and critics, once they learned about Camille, they appreciated that extra layer of concept. It's one reason Sign of the Times era is often hailed as one of his peak creative periods. He was taking risks like this.
Absolutely. So, to recap, Camille was Prince's pitched-up alter ego, created by slowing down tape during recording and speeding it up on playback, giving an androgynous sound. Prince nearly released an album under that name with no credit to himself, which shows how committed he was to the concept. Ultimately, it was shelved, but the song survived and the legend of Camille grew over time. Now for another wild Prince story, one from the vault, let me tell you about Camille, the legendary Prince album that almost never saw the light of day. Back in 1986, Prince was on a creative tear. He had this crazy cool idea, record an entire album as Camille, his alter ego with a high-pitched, feminine voice. And I'm not talking one or two songs, he had a whole LP ready. Prince actually sped up his vocals to become Camille, basically creating a funky, androgynous character who wasn't even credited as Prince on the cover. The plan, release it anonymously under the name Camille and let fans wonder who the heck this new artist was. Ballsy, right? A major pop star hiding behind an alias at the peak of his fame. Classic Prince move. So what happened? Well, Prince recorded 8 tracks for Camille, even got as far as test pressing some vinyl copies iHeart.com live for livemusic.com. The songs were next level awesome, a blend of Minneapolis funk, quirky pop, and pure 1986 Prince magic, all with that tweaked Camille voice. Here's the original Camille track list Prince had in mind. Rebirth of the Flesh, a nasty funk jam. This one remained a true elusive gem for decades. Housequake, yes, the same floor shaker that ended up on Sign of the Times. Strange Relationship also made its way to Sign of the Times, giving us that off-kilter pop we love. Feel You Up, a cheeky groove, later released as a B-side. Prince snuck this out on the flip of the Partyman single from Batman. Shockadelica, a snappy funk number that became a B-side to If I Was Your Girlfriend. Good Love, a bright, frenetic track Prince gifted to the Bright Lights, big city movie soundtrack in '88. If I Was Your Girlfriend, yup, the iconic track we know from Sign of the Times. Camille was supposed to sing it first. Rock hard in a funky place, this spicy cut found a home on the official 1994 release, The Black Album. But if no you know, it had been on the Black Album since day one. Such a funky track. Basically, Camille was hiding in plain sight all these years. Its songs scattered across other releases. Most of the world heard Camille's tracks one way or another, just not as the singular package Prince first envisioned. And that one song, Rebirth of the Flesh. That sucker stayed in the vault until 2020, when it finally popped up on a deluxe reissue of Sign of the Times. When I finally heard it, I was like, so this is what we were missing, and it did not disappoint. Now why was the album shelved? Ah, the million-dollar question. Officially, Prince scrapped Camille just weeks before its 1987 release date. Word is, he folded those tracks into a bigger project, the ambitious 3-LP Crystal Ball, which morphed into the 2-LP sign other times after Warner Bros. Said 3 records, too much, buddy. Unofficially, I like to think Prince just changed his mind on how to introduce his alter ego. Maybe he felt the world wasn't ready for a mystery artist who bends gender and messes with his voice. Or maybe he had a new plan by breakfast. You know Prince, always moving on to the next idea in a blink. So poof, Camille got shelved. A mythical lost album, talked about in hushed tones by us die-hard fans for years. I remember digging through fanzines and early internet forums, piecing together which bootleg tracks were meant for Camille. It was like musical detective work. Fast forward to now, cue drum roll, and Camille's story gets a new chapter. Jack White, yep, the White Stripes guy, is a huge Prince fan, and his label Third Man Records made a big announcement in 2022. They said they'd struck a deal with Prince's estate to finally release the Camille album officially. Third Man's co-founder Ben Blackwell was giddy, saying Prince's people agreed, almost too easy to let them put it out. My jaw about hit the floor when I heard that. After almost 35 years in the vault, Camille was gonna strut out in all her gender-bending funky glory for the world to hear as originally intended. They confirmed it'd be the same 8-song track list as the 1986 configuration. Prince's estate giving a thumbs up so easily was a surprise. I mean, Prince was famously protective of his unreleased stuff. But hey, we weren't complaining. Jack White was personally invested in this, by the way. The man literally paid almost $50,000 at an auction for one of the rare Camille vinyl test pressings. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is. Fun fact, Questlove from The Roots is also a huge Prince nerd. He outbid Jack for another Camille test pressing back in 2017. I can just imagine those two in a bidding war over Prince vinyl. So Jack was determined to do Camille right. Third Man even helped with a 2020 deluxe reissue of Sign of the Times, so they're deep in this Prince. So, is it out yet? Well, as of today, we're all still tapping our feet waiting. Third Man hasn't announced a release date. Prince's ghost must be having a laugh, fashionably late as usual. There were whispers that some legal or estate hurdles popped up. The Prince estate had some leadership changes, and maybe not everyone was on the same page about Camille escaping the vault. One estate advisor cryptically noted that owning a rare record doesn't mean you automatically get to release it. Translation, the deal might have hit a snag, but I'm ever the optimist. The fact that it got this close to release is huge. Camille is like the holy grail for Prince aficionados, and knowing Jack White, he won't give up easy. So here we are, nearly 40 years after Prince dreamed up this alter ego. The story of Camille is still unfolding, part myth, part reality. Whether the album drops tomorrow, or we're waiting till the 40th anniversary of Sign of the Times, one thing's for sure, the legend of Camille only adds to Prince's aura. He was so ahead of his time that in 1987, an androgynous, gender-blurred persona might have been too radical to unleash. But today, we're ready to celebrate it. When Camille finally comes out officially, and I do believe it will, it'll be like welcoming back an old friend, the funky, mysterious side of Prince that's been hiding in plain sight. And you bet I'll be first in line to snag that peach-colored vinyl. This is DJ Warm Cookies signing off. Stay funky, and keep your ears open for Camille's grand debut. Any day now.
Perfect summary. Now, I bet a lot of folks listening are itching to know, can I do this myself? Like without an analog tape machine from 1986? And the answer is yes. You can absolutely do a Camille-style voice effect today with modern tools. In fact, we're going to walk through how to recreate the Camille voice using Logic Pro and only using the stock plugins or features that come with it.
Let's do it. Time to open up Logic and get into our DIY Camille voice tutorial. Recreating Prince's Camille voice in Logic Pro using stock plugins.
Alright, so let's set the scene. You want to channel Prince's Camille voice on one of your tracks. Maybe for fun, maybe for a specific character in a song. How can we achieve that with Logic Pro's stock tools? We've got a breakdown here, so let's go through it step by step.
Where do we start?
Step 1. Record your vocals, or the part you want to pitch up, at a slower speed pitch than normal. In Logic Pro, the easiest way to do this is to use the Varispeed feature. Varispeed lets you slow down or speed up the entire project's playback and recording speed. Basically, the digital equivalent of what Prince did with tape. First, you'll need to enable Varispeed in Logic's control bar. If it's not visible by default, you can turn it on in the custom LCD settings. Switch the mode to Varispeed, speed, and pitch. This setting means when you alter the speed, it will also alter the pitch, just like a tape machine. That's what we want. Now, slow down the project by a certain amount. For example, you might try slowing to, say, minus 20% or a few semitones down. This part is subjective. A 20% slowdown would drop the pitch by a couple of semitones, roughly a whole tone or a minor third. You don't have to be super precise. You can experiment. The idea is to pick a slowdown where, when sped back up, your voice sounds convincingly Camille without losing clarity. Prince likely used a fairly small shift, just enough to feminize his voice a bit.
So at this point, everything, the backing track, metronome, etc., is playing slower and in a lower key, right? We're basically creating an alternate universe where the song is slow and low.
Exactly. Step 2. Now you record your vocals while listening to that slowed down track. This means you will be singing lower and slower than the song's actual key and tempo. It might feel funny. You have to kind of get into the vibe. Maybe channel your inner Barry White if you're dropping it low, but perform the vocals as solidly as you can at this slower speed.
And I assume you should still put the same emotion and energy into it, even though it's slow, like Prince would still emote as Camille, just at a different speed. Keep it soulful, folks, even if it feels like slow-mo.
Definitely. Give it your all. Now, once you've recorded that take, we move on to step 3. Turn off Varispeed. Return the project to normal speed. When you do this and play back your recording, your voice will now play faster and at a higher pitch. Voila! You should hear yourself sounding like a different person, potentially a lot like Prince's Camille effect. Your phrasing will be in time with the original tempo because you recorded to the slowed music, but your timbre is altered. It's kind of magical the first time you hear it.
That's so cool. And because you recorded it with the track slowed down, when it's sped up, your vocal performance matches the normal backing track perfectly, just in a new pitch. No digital artifacts either. It's a very natural sounding pitch shift since it was done via speed. It's literally the same thing Prince did analog, now done in Logic.
You got it. The result is a smooth, formant shifted voice. You'll notice your voice sounds thinner and more youthful, maybe more feminine or androgynous. That's because not only the pitch, but the formants, the tonal quality in your voice have shifted up too. In other words, it's like your vocal cords got smaller, which is what happens when you speed up tape or audio.
Now what if someone doesn't want to mess with Varispeed? Is there a more straightforward way with a plugin, like after you've recorded a normal vocal?
Yes, absolutely. Alternative method. You can record your vocal normally without any slowdown and then use Logic stock plugins to pitch it up. 2 plugins come to mind: Pitch Shifter or Vocal Transformer. Pitch Shifter. This is a simple plugin where you can dial in a pitch offset in semitones and cents. You could take your vocal region and say pitch pitch it up by +3 semitones or whatever interval gives you that Camille vibe. The pitch shifter in Logic is decent, though if you push it too far, you might hear some warble or artifacts. It's an older algorithm. Keep the mix at 100% wet for a full shift, and voila, higher voice. But note, a straightforward pitch shift like this will also speed up the playback length of the region if you don't use time machine algorithms. To clarify, Logic can time stretch to keep the length, or you can literally just speed it up. For authenticity, you'd actually want it to speed up, shorten slightly, because that's what tape does. However, the difference for a small pitch change is minor. Vocal Transformer. This is a more advanced stock plugin which allows you to adjust pitch and formant separately. To use it Camille style, you'd raise the pitch parameter a few semitones. You could also experiment with the formant knob. If you lower the formant while raising the pitch, you can sometimes preserve a bit more of the original vocal character, so it doesn't go full chipmunk. But honestly, the true Camille sound didn't preserve the original formant. It fully embraced that squeezed, high formant sound. So you might not need to tweak formant much. Just let the voice sound naturally high and slightly nasal, thin as it will when pitched up. That thinness is part of the charm.
Right. Camille's voice is high and kind of slippery, but it's still got body. It's not Mickey Mouse helium. It's more like androgynous alien funk voice.
Love that description, and you can achieve that by not overdoing the pitch shift. Keep it in that moderate range, maybe 2 to 6 semitones up. It also helps if you record it with a bit of depth in your voice, singing a touch lower or with more chest voice at the slower speed. So when it's sped up, it still has some fullness. If you sing in a thin falsetto and then pitch it up, it might get too wispy.
Any creative tips to add, like layering or effects after we've done the pitch trick?
Definitely. One trick, double the vocal, record it twice and pitch both up, or even keep one version unpitched, your natural voice quietly underneath and the pitched one on top. Sometimes Prince would combine his normal and Camille vocals in a mix to get a cool blend. For instance, backing vocals might be normal Prince, lead is Camille. If you blend a low vocal underneath your pitched up one, it can add back a little warmth while still sounding like the Camille character is singing. Just mix it low enough that you don't obviously hear the low voice, only its supporting body. Also, effects. Prince's Camille vocals were often pretty dry and in your face, maybe a bit of slapback delay or room reverb, but not huge reverb. Keeping it relatively dry maintains that intimate, direct feel, almost like this voice is whispering in your ear. So you can use Logic's stock EQ to roll off a bit of low end, since a high-pitched vocal won't have much anyway, and maybe a touch of compression to tame any spikes, though interestingly, speeding up a vocal naturally smooths some dynamics. If the voice sounds too harsh due to the pitch, a gentle EQ cut around the nasally frequencies, maybe 1 to 2 kilohertz, can reduce any whine. Or do the opposite, boost around 3 to 5 kilohertz if you want it extra crisp and cutting, since Camille kinda cuts through the mix.
And don't forget, folks, have fun with it. Try different intervals. Try singing in different styles. You could even reverse the approach. Record a super fast, chipmunky vocal and slow it down to get a weird, deep, slow Camille voice. That's basically what Prince did for his lower voice alter egos, like the spooky voice in Bob George. But that's another story.
Haha, yes. Once you understand Verispeed, you realize you have a whole universe of vocal effects at your disposal. But to stay on track, if you follow those steps with Logic's Verispeed or the pitch plugins, you'll get very close to that authentic Camille sound. And remember, Logic's Varispeed is your friend. It directly emulates tape-style speed and pitch changes, so it's the most authentic route.
I love that we can do in software what used to require actual tape machines and a lot of guts to attempt. Big props to Prince for coming up with it back then, and big props to modern tech for letting us all play with these tricks so easily.
Same here, and one more tidbit. Prince didn't only use the Camille voice on obscure tracks, he even snuck it into popular songs. For example, Partyman from the Batman soundtrack has some of Prince's vocals sped up in the mix. Basically, Camille making a cameo, which is a perfect transition, because I think it's time to talk about some bass lines.
Yes, let's shift gears from the highs to the lows. Specifically, Prince's low end on Partyman and Alphabet Saint, two bass lines that any funk lover should know. Prince's funky bass lines, Partyman and Alphabet Saint, tone breakdown and emulating in Logic. Willa, so we've tackled Prince's high range secrets. Now for the bass. Can we just take a moment to appreciate how funky the bass lines in Partyman and Alphabet are?
Oh, absolutely. These two tracks have very different contexts. Partyman was 1989 from the Batman soundtrack, with Prince basically channeling the Joker's party vibe. Alphabet was 1988 from Love Section, more raw and stripped down, but both have bass lines that make you want to move. And Prince, being the musical genius he was, approached each in a cool way.
Let's start with Partyman. That song's got this upbeat, slamming groove. What's special about the bass in Partyman?
Partyman is interesting because on the surface you hear what sounds like a really funky slap bass driving it. Prince actually filmed a bit of himself playing bass for a documentary. There's a clip where he's wildly slapping the bass riff for Partyman. He could definitely thump out a line. But here's the kicker. According to some folks who listen closely, the final mix of Partyman doesn't have a traditional bass guitar line prominent at all. Instead, Prince did something clever. Apparently, he sang the bass line himself in a low voice, and then process that vocal to sound like a bass. So what you think is a bass guitar in parts of the song is actually Prince's voice, pitch shifted down or EQ'd to be super bass. How crazy is that?
Wait, are you serious? That's mind-blowing. So he basically pulled a reverse Camille there, using his voice to imitate a bass guitar. Leave it to Prince to sing and play every instrument, sometimes literally with his voice.
It's kind of an urban legend among Prince fans, but it comes from credible observations. If you listen carefully to the recording, the bass has a slightly different texture, almost like a vocal tone at times. Prince was known to use his voice in unconventional ways, growls, screams, multi-layered harmonies acting like synth pads, etc. So using his voice as a faux bass was totally in his bag of tricks. That said, there are also parts of Partyman, like some breakdowns and live versions where an actual bass guitar is playing, and Prince definitely recorded a bass for it, even if it's low in the mix. So it's kind of a hybrid approach. The song's bass groove is definitely there. It just might be coming from a creatively synthesized source.
Technically and musically, that's super cool, but for someone wanting to emulate the tone of Partyman in Logic, should we try to copy Prince's vocal bass trick or go for a bass guitar sound?
We can talk about both approaches. To emulate the exact Prince trick, you could actually try singing a bass line and pitch shifting your voice down an octave with Logic's plugins, essentially the inverse of the Camille technique. For instance, you could hum or sing the bass riff, maybe in your normal range or even slightly higher. Then use the pitch shifter plugin to drop it minus 12 semitones, 1 octave. You'd also add an EQ to cut the highs and boost the lows to make it rumble. Maybe add a bit of distortion or formant shifting to thicken it. It's a fun experiment, and yes, that would mimic what Prince reportedly did. We have all the tools and stock logic for that. The pitch shifter, the vocal transformer to drop formant and pitch, etc. The result can indeed sound like a synthesized bass instrument, kind of raspy and electronic, but in a cool way.
That's a great creative exercise, and definitely try it if you're curious, folks. But say, I just want that funky bass sound without singing into my Mac. Let's break down how to get a classic Prince-esque bass guitar tone for these songs using Logic's stock instruments and plugins.
Good plan. So, option 2, use a bass guitar sound. Prince's bass tone on funk tracks, especially in the late 80s, often had that bright, punchy slap character. He was influenced by people like Larry Graham and Bootsy Collins, so think in that direction. For Partyman, the groove is upbeat funk in Eudorian for the theory nerds, and it has a bit of that James Brown flavor. In fact, the bass line in Partyman is noted to share similarities with a James Brown song, talking loud and saying nothing. So we want a tone that's snappy and rhythmic. Here's how I do it in Logic with stock tools. Instrument. If you have a real bass guitar, great, record that. If not, Logic's bass guitar software instruments can work. The newer Logic might have an improved sample bass or even the bass guitar player plugins. But even the old EXS24 stock bass, like fingerstyle electric bass or pick bass, can be a starting point. For slap, a picked or fingered sample can work. We'll sculpt it with effects. There's also the sculpture synth method, but let's keep it simple with a sample. Amp and cabinet, insert bass, amp designer on the channel. This plugin emulates famous bass amps and cabs. For a funk slap tone, I might choose an amp model that's clean and bright. For example, bass amp designer has presets like funk clean or disco pop, depending on Logic version. Something with a tight low end and a crisp high end. If I recall, one of the modeled amps is an Ampeg SVT, big deep sound, and another is more of a Fender Bassman style, a bit more mid-range. I'd probably go with a modern amp plus 4x10 cabinet and make sure the cabinet's tweeter is on or set to a higher presence. That will give you the high frequency snap for slaps and pops. EQ, tone shaping. In Amp Designer itself, you have EQ knobs. Generally for slap bass, people scoop the mids a bit and boost lows and highs. For example, boost some bass around 60 to 100 Hz and treble 4 to 10 kilohertz and dip the mid frequencies a little. This gives that smiley face EQ curve that accentuates the thump and the click of slaps. Prince's sound isn't extremely scooped, it still has body but compression. Slap bass is very dynamic. The difference between a thumb hit and a finger pop can be large, so compression is key. Logic's compressor plugin, stock, is great. Use a fairly fast attack to catch the peaks of the slaps, and a release that's quick enough to recover before the next note, but not so quick that it kills sustain. Ratio could be somewhere like 4 to 1 or higher if needed. There's even a preset in Logic's compressor for bass guitar. The goal is to even out the volume of each note and add punch. When you really dig in, the compressor will tame the spike and add a bit of sustain, which keeps the groove consistent. Prince's bass in these tracks often has a very controlled sound. That's compression and good playing technique. Additional effects. In the late 80s, Prince sometimes added a touch of chorus to bass for a subtle widening. This was common in the era. Think of that rubbery chorus bass sound on Alphabet Street, for example. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hint of chorus or doubling, because the bass has a popping presence, but also some width. Logic's chorus plugin, the stock modulation, on a very low depth setting, maybe mix 10 to 20%, could simulate that vintage chorus effect gently, if desired. It's not obvious in the mix, so keep it subtle if you use it.
Nice. So for Partyman, we have a chain, bass instrument, bass amp designer for amp sim and basic EQ, compressor, maybe an EQ plugin for fine tweaks, a touch of chorus if we want that 80s sheen. All stock plugins, all doable in Logic pretty quickly. What about Alphabet Street? That song's bass is a bit different in feel, right?
Yes, Alphabet Street has a really cool vibe. The song is more stripped down and raw. The bass in Alphabet Street is described as a popping bass line, accompanied by a simple drum machine beat and hand claps. Prince, or possibly his bassist at the time, but it is said that Prince played it in studio, is basically popping and sliding around a groove that's part bluesy, part playful funk. For tone, I'd aim for something similar to Partyman in terms of brightness, but maybe a tad more raw, possibly a bit less low-end sub and more mid-range bite, because in Alphabet, the bass really occupies the mid-funk range. It has to cut through a sparse mix where the rhythm guitar is thin and percussive, and the drum machine isn't huge sounding either. The bass kind of carries the song's groove. So to emulate Alphabet Street tone in Logic, use the same bass amp designer, but maybe choose a slightly different amp/cab combo. Perhaps a more vintage sounding amp that gives a warm mid-range. Maybe the flip-top style amp model if available, which emulates those old tube amps with a round tone, but still keep the treble presence for pops. You might even try a smaller cabinet model. Smaller cabs often have punchier mid-range. EQ, you might not scoop as much as with Partyman. Maybe even boost a bit around 200 to 300 hertz to get some of that pluck body and the sound of the fingerboard, and definitely have the 1 to 2 kilohertz range present. That's where the snap of the strings lives aside from the extreme highs. Essentially, ensure the popping harmonics are heard. Compression, absolutely compress here too. Alphabet Street bass line has very percussive staccato pops. A compressor will make those pops more pronounced and keep the level solid. You might use a slightly lower threshold and moderate ratio to catch almost every note a bit. The line kind of pops in and out, so you want consistency. Maybe add enveloper, Logic's transient shaper, if you want to exaggerate the attack of each note. This is an extra tip. Logic's enveloper plugin can boost the attack portion of a sound. If you set it gently to boost attack by a few decibels and shorten the release, you can make the slaps even snappier. This can help emulate that real string snap sensation. Use it subtly though, or it can sound unnatural.
Great tip. Transient designers are underrated for stuff like this. They can really make a DI bass sound like it's popping out of the speakers.
Exactly. And don't forget noise. One thing about real slap bass is you get a bit of fret buzz or string noise. If you're using a clean sample that doesn't have that, sometimes adding a tiny bit of saturation or overdrive can simulate the complexity of a real bass. Logic's overdrive or distortion plugin, dialed way down, like just a 5 to 10% mix or very low drive, can add a faint grit that makes the bass feel more alive. On Alphabet Street, the bass isn't distorted, but you hear fingers on strings. A hint of saturation can bring out those nuances.
So basically, we treat it like we're mixing a real bass. Get the amp tone, compress it, EQ to taste, and add slight effects for character, all with Logic's built-ins.
You got it, and both Partyman and Alphabets require feel too. I have to say that. You can set up the exact channel strip we described, but if you want it to sound authentic, try to play the part in the style. For Partyman, a steady funky groove with maybe some slides or octaves, and if you're adventurous, maybe try the vocal bass trick for fun. For Alphabet Street, put some attitude in those pops and pauses. There's a lot of personality in that line.
And if you're not a bassist, you can still program the MIDI notes for the bass and use these effects. Just make sure to program some velocity variation to simulate how a bassist might accent certain notes. You could even use Logic's humanize function on the MIDI or draw in some groove. The compression will help even it out, but those variations will make it more human and funky.
Absolutely. One more quick note, channel strip presets in Logic might already have something close. If you browse the library under bass, you might find presets named like punchy slap bass or bright funk bass. Those will likely load an amp, EQ, compressor, etc. with settings similar to what we discussed. Feel free to use those as a starting point. There's no shame in presets. You can then tweak from there. We basically reverse engineered what a preset might have. Amp sim, EQ, compression, a dash of chorus maybe.
It's actually a great exercise to load a preset and then look at what it did. Like, why does this preset sound slappy? Oh, they scooped 400 Hz and boosted 4 kHz. Interesting. It's a good way to learn.
Totally. So whether you build it yourself or use a preset, Logic's stock plugins can 100% get you in the ballpark of Prince's bass tones. Partyman will end up with a funky, crisp slap sound with perhaps a modern G, and Alphabet will give you a percussive, popping funk groove that feels a bit more old school in its rawness. And remember, Prince's bass playing, when it's him or even his band members, is as much about rhythm as melody. He often treats the bass like a drum, especially in songs like Alphabet, where it's locking with a simple drum machine pattern. So when emulating, focus on that tight timing and groove. Use Logic's metronome or even Logic's groove templates if you have one extracted from the track, or just play along until it feels right.
I think the bottom line is, you don't need fancy gear to chase these sounds. We just outlined how to do both the Camille voice and these iconic bass tones with nothing but Logic's built-in toolkit. It's all about understanding the technique and creatively applying the tools.
Couldn't have said it better. Prince was all about creativity and pushing the tools he had. In his case, maybe it was analog gear, but we can do a lot with today's native software. So, dear listeners, whether you're about to pitch your voice into Camille territory or slap out a nasty bass line, give it a try in your own session. It's a fun way to learn, and it might even inspire a whole new song.
Conclusion, closing thoughts, and next episode teaser. This has been such a fun episode. I mean, we covered a lot of ground in a chill conversation, from Prince's genre-bending alter ego to the nuts and bolts of tape tricks and Logic plugins. Who knew episode 40 would take us into vocal gender transformation and funky bass in one go?
every minute of it. It's episodes like this that remind me why we do Why Make Music, because behind every cool sound in music, there's a story and a technique waiting to be explored. Huge shout out to the late great Prince for continually inspiring us. And a shout out to all of you listening, especially the musicians and producers out there who might be inspired to experiment after hearing this.
Yes, shout out to the community. Whether you're a Logic Pro user, a Prince super fan, or just someone who enjoys music trivia, we appreciate you hanging with us. We'd love to hear if you try out the Camille voice or nail those bass lines. Definitely share your creations or experiences with us on social media or in the comments.
Absolutely. Send us your funky experiments. Maybe we'll even feature a few in a future episode. Speaking of which, let's give a little teaser for next episode before we sign off. We won't spoil too much, but we're planning to switch it up. In episode 41, we'll be diving into another musical mystery technique. Hint, it involves a famous vintage recording trick and how you can recreate it in a modern DAW. If you like today's blend of history and home studio how-to, you're going to love the next one.
Consider my curiosity piqued. Alright everyone, that's it for today's deep dive. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a rating or review and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming up.
Keep making music, keep experimenting, and stay inspired. This is ThinkTimm signing off.
And this is DJ Warm Cookies signing off. Stay funky, friends. Until next time on Why Make Music. And just like that, we've come to the close of another funky, soulful, music-soaked episode of Why Make Music. The fantastic podcast where we never stop talking about the things we love. Before I let y'all go, you know I got to shout out the whole ThinkTimm universe. Slide over to www.thinktimm.com. That's home base. You'll find the blog, the beats, the brilliance, and every piece of this audio journey we've been building. Follow the movement on Instagram, selfie at ThinkTimm, at DJ Warm Cookies, yep, that's me. Piano at WDMNation. At WhyMakeMusic. We're out here on Blue Sky too, at ThinkTimm. And yes, the SoundCloud stays active at ThinkTimm. You can stream all 6 projects. That's Demotional, Chord Feelings, Botanical, Booming Bouquet, Suppler Bass, Reality Effect, Lubrication, Sonic Civilization, Perihopic, Elemental Fusion, Nomenclature, Verbal Scales. All available right now on every major streaming platform. Wherever you vibe, we're there. We're coming up on our 1-year mark. Can you believe that? And trust me when I say we've got some vocal projects on the way that are crazy, insane, beautiful. I said what I said, and I meant it. Thank you to everyone who listens, shares, likes, follows, subscribes, reposts, or just nods along. Y'all are the reason we keep doing this. Big love to the sync agents, music supervisors, independent producers, bedroom creators, and every soul who tunes in just because they love music. Please, if you're feeling what we're doing, like, follow, and subscribe. And above all else, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Continue to ThinkTimm, ThinkTimm, if nothing else. And hey, don't forget to follow your girl Willa May, aka DJ Warm Cookies. We just getting started. Check out the blog over at thinktimm.com because the written word hits different when it's crafted with heart. Until next time, stay funky, stay curious, stay inspired, and above all else, make music, peace, and be wild. Bye.